So, we're going to kick off this afternoon. It was technically afternoon last time, but stay with me. With Emily, who's going to chat to us about XL to ChatGPT. So give it up for Emily.
Sorry, is this the clicker? Sorry. Yeah. Hello, can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, so my name is Emily Hogarty and I'm a tech consultant for EY. Last year I actually spoke at this event and I was coming to you as a business analyst on the intelligent automation team, but now I've actually stepped up into being an intelligent automation developer, so I'm just going to talk to you about some automation today. It's just not working yet. Okay, so starting with just a quick kind of overview of the current automation climate. So automation is a blanket term that we use for technology that is used to like mimic human action and tasks. So do the clicks and send text the same way that a human would. And the concept of automation started back with desktop automation. So this is what we call things like shortcuts and hotkeys that you would use within different platforms. So it's not one specific technology, but a different way that you can, shave off some time and boost some efficiency in your own work stream. So again, things like macros, VB scripts, and maybe even just, shortcuts on your desk or on your keyboard. And although this wasn't technically an automation technology, it did pave the way for the first of the technologies, and this is when we started with RPA, or robotic process automation. So what RPA is a technology that first emerged in the early 2000s, and it allowed people to build software robots or bots. My friends have probably heard me complaining about many times at this point. But what it allows you to do is then mimic tasks the same way like a human would. So doing things like click this button, type into this field, take out this Excel, really simple things that kind of just help alleviate the burden of manual admin tasks off of staff. And now within many, many organizations, you will have RPA robots that are doing complete end-to-end processes the same way that a human would, and just giving time back to staff, to humans, to kind of be a bit more human and do things that require human intelligence and creativity. And unfortunately, robotic process automation was completely non-intelligent, so absolutely nothing behind the eyes. And this is when intelligent automation came in. So intelligent automation is the adoption of intelligent solutions, so like AI platforms, into automation. And what this did was give a boost of capability into what could be automated. So before this, if a process took any form of human judgment, it was just out of scope for automation. RPA only followed really explicit logic and instructions, whereas intelligent automation has kind of given things a bit more flexibility, things like reading PDFs or having a bit of an unstructured input data source are now a bit more suitable for automation, although again, still limited. So when I used to show clients this slide, not the pink version, I made it a bit more professional, but I used to show clients this slide, and over intelligent automation, I would have a marker that would say, this is where we are now. And over AI automation, we would say, this is where we're going. This is a bit, wishy-washy. Nobody knows what it's going to do. Nobody really knows what the difference is between intelligent automation, which already uses AI, and what AI automation is going to do. It was just a bit of a futuristic concept, until we got Gen AI. So Gen AI was a concept before, but kind of emerged with the emergence of OpenAI back in November 2022. And this is when we started seeing what was AI automation. So it's still not a very mature product concept, technology as a whole. There's not that many use cases available that you can buy off the shelf right now. But we've seen now where it's going and what's going to happen to the automation market. And what you see now, and I'm sure loads of you have seen this in your own different tools that you're using throughout the day, you now have AI built into tools. So it's making things easier to, turn around, build, deliver, and it's also then increasing the capability of the tools that you're using. So it's easier to turn things around, which makes them cheaper to deliver, and then it's also increasing the capability and therefore increasing the value. And what happens when you have increased popularity, decreased price, is that you have an increase in the overall market size. So in the past 4 years, the automation market has increased nearly fivefold in value. And this is as a result of more use cases, more capability from the adoption of intelligent solutions into automation, and then also from the pressure of companies to adopt technology to kind of cut costs and boost efficiency. And this works out as about, not to get bogged down in numbers, but about a 40% increase in the market growth of automation year on year. So every year it gets 40% bigger. And this is projected to even pick up even more. So from here on, it's projected to kind of be a 50% growth. So this is again from the adoption of more things, the emergence of AI automation, and then again, more pressure on companies to adopt technology. And at the end of 2034, the market value of automation is estimated to be 13.3 billion. But what does this really mean? Like, what do these numbers actually mean? What does the impact of this have on us as consumers and as members of the workforce and as service users? Because it's not really that obvious. And you might look at these numbers and think, well, this is just because, some unicorn startup in Silicon Valley is like splurging on tech it doesn't need. But actually, you'll notice it if you know what to look for. So when you're opening a bank account from your bed, or you're asking a chatbot to track where your parcel is, this is from companies adopting technology like automation. And it's come to a point now where you will start to notice, again, without maybe being able to put your finger on it, organizations that don't use automation. So I'm going to bring you through a personal anecdote because I'm still mad about it 2 years later. But 2 years ago, I started working in Belfast. I am not from Belfast. I had to open a bank account so that I could get paid. I had to physically, walk into my bank. I had to go sit down. I took a Friday afternoon off work because the bank is only open while I'm also working, which is not very convenient. And I sat in the bank for 4 hours and then waited another 3 weeks until someone could process my handwritten form so that they could open a bank account for me and I could get paid. So it was a long 3 weeks of me asking my parents for money. They still don't appreciate it either. But in comparison, who has maybe a Revolut or a Monzo account? Show of hands. How quick is it to open a Revolut or a Monzo account, again, from the safety of your bed? So it's quite a stark contrast already between what is automation already doing for us, how is it influencing our choices? Because again, I need to open a savings account and I'm too scared to go back into my bank. I think I might just change bank accounts at this point because I don't want to deal with it. And this is when we're in our 400 million market. Just like, can you imagine how stark that's going to be when we get to 2034? And recently I was actually giving a talk to the Project Management Institute, and again on the same topic, how we can use AI and automation to kind of boost productivity, similar to what Svetlana spoke about earlier. And some of the feedback we got from the audience was that people felt like it was cheating. They were like, I don't want to use Copilot because that's not really authentic. That's not me writing the email. It's not fair. Or I don't want to use ChatGPT to, draft a document because that's not me. It's not fair. And I'm just using this to get ahead. But that's now. People are using that to get ahead now. But more and more people are going to start using this. And it won't be a case of getting ahead. It will be a case of keeping up. And when we get to this market, saying that using, automation and AI is cheating is going to be like an accountant saying Excel is cheating. Like, it'll just be ridiculous. So what is the technology we're using to keep up, stay relevant? So again, the first, as I mentioned earlier, is RPA. So this is our non-intelligent, really rule-based technology. And it's actually really, really useful, even though I'm kind of making it sound really bad right now. So what RPA can do is do things like, click a button, like you click a UI element, or, type a value into a UI element, like a text field. It can, extract data out of an Excel. It can filter the data. It can split columns. It can write it into another Excel. And it's really, really useful for doing things that are really manual, repetitive, like back-end office processes that a lot of people are still doing. You might not be aware of, but loads of people are still doing. Another reason why RPA is quite popular over other tools, so there might be cases where, you could use a different technology, say like if you want one platform to speak to another, and you might say, right, this is going to need a massive platform transformation. We can come in and say, actually, maybe RPA would be better because it's low risk, it's non-invasive, it sits on your front end like a human, but it runs in the background, so you don't really notice it happening. But what I can do is make two platforms speak to each other, and then if anything breaks or something doesn't work the way you want it, you can just switch it off and nothing's happened. You haven't touched your systems in the back end. It's completely low risk. And as we've kind of moved forward, although RPA is, again, quite basic in its capability, we've kind of seen integration with other platforms, like popular tools. So you'll have like plugins or like APIs within RPA platforms, which means you now have activities that can say like run a macro in Excel or send an email from Outlook. So it's, again, it's less fiddly, it's easier to develop, and it's easier to quick kind of turn things around. So I'm gonna play a demo, hopefully, of an RPA running. Oh, does that say it needs request access? Is that gonna cause a problem? So maybe I won't play the demo. Click again and just skip over it. Okay. Sorry guys, we're not watching the demo, but what I'll give you a description. So what it was a back-end like receipts reconciliation process that I've built for one of my clients. And previously they had not one specific person, but they would share the load between the team. But at any one time, 1 to 2 people were doing this process. It took about 4 weeks of development to turn around, which is, you know, they paid me for 4 weeks. I don't know how much they're paying for me, to be honest. But, you know, cheap enough for that. They don't have to hire another person to do this. If the demand gets higher, they can use these people, free them up to do something more valuable. And this is touching on a topic that people kind of think, is this going to replace us? And we always, always, always say absolutely not, because what you're doing is probably really low value in the first place. It might be something, a new process that's come in from a regulation that you now have to do at 10 past 5 because you don't have time to do it any other time. It's alleviating the burden of tasks on you so you can do a better job at other things, at more valuable, more creative, more intelligent tasks. And then we got into intelligent automation. So we've gone through RPA. Now we're going to talk about how AI is kind of boosting RPA. So intelligent automation, or IA, which is very confusing when you also say AI all the time, it kind of builds upon RPA. So it still does things like click buttons and, you know, send texts and into the screen, but it also has a bit more of an AI capability into it. So it can do things like read, scan documents, or recognize an image on a screen, or extract data from unstructured sources, which RPA does not like. If it's not in an Excel, it's not happening. And it can also implement machine learning algorithms into automations to kind of mimic like decision making. And what also falls into the remit of intelligent automation is chatbots. So chatbots, a classic chatbot can be built for a specific purpose. So it can recognize, you know, the sentiment or the meaning behind a message from a user, and then can be given access to maybe an organization's data, like a website or a database, so that it can answer specific questions. And what a chatbot can also do is integrate with automation. So say, for instance, my bank's just had a massive tech transformation, and I go onto my bank's website and I say to the chatbot, I want to change my address. The chatbot would recognize what I want to say. It would say, you know, Emily wants to change her address. Okay, I need this data. So it might feed back to me, what is your new address that you want to change it to? And I give that information to it. It extracts that data from the conversation. It uses that as an input into an automation, and then it might like trigger an automation. So it'll go into like legacy systems or web-based applications and, you know, update my address. Once that's finished running, it will then feed back to me and say, okay, that's done. And that's the conversation finished. It might say, you know, do you want anything else? But it's really, really powerful what you can do when you include AI into automation. There's a lot more scope for what we can do. Hopefully this demo plays. I have a demo of an AI or intelligent automation. Yeah, it's up at the...
Because you could grant access.
Do we have time? Is that really... Well, can I do that? Like, is that going to just take a load of time? Yeah, okay, my friend's going to bring me down my phone. Sorry, thanks, guys. But if not, I'll just keep talking about the flow that I was going to make. So I've built a model. It was very crude, so anybody that is really into AI please do not shout at me. I literally just stole, oh, there's no internet in here? Okay. And I'm breaking everything. Okay, I'm just going to keep talking. So what I built was a model that could predict if you had if you were at risk of cardiovascular disease or not. Again, I just stole this data off a website. Like, I just found it on the internet so that I could build a demo. It was a proof of concept. It's not doing anything. But what I did was build a Power App on the front that could say, feed in data. So say, for instance, you're a doctor, you're putting data about your patient into a data set or a database. It then feeds into the model that then predicts if you have cardiovascular disease or not. And one of the data points that was requested in the form was the patient's email. So then if the model predicted if you were at risk of cardiovascular disease, what the automation did was then schedule a meeting between you and a cardiologist, like refer you to a cardiologist, put in the meeting, and then send you an email and let you know, like attach, a healthy information, healthy living pack. So it's, emailing people saying you've been identified as a risk, following your latest GP appointment, here's this information in the meantime while you're waiting to meet your cardiologist. Oh, now the clicker's not working.
You didn't access the map?
No. Oh, is that it? That's it.
Okay, let's try.
Oh, it's fine. Okay, so then we come to generative AI. So this is not necessarily its own automation technology, but what it's done is completely transformed, as I mentioned before, the automation space. So as I'm aware, or as I'm sure you're all aware, since the ridiculous amount of airtime that OpenAI has gotten in the past year or so, Gen AI has a lot of capabilities. So it can do things like, narrate a video or transcribe a phone call or write your code, annotate your code, generate images, generate videos, so many different things. It's ridiculous. You actually can't, I would stand here all day and list them. And what it's done is really given in automation a boost, and I'm sure a lot of different tools as well, because it doesn't just generate things, it understands. So it understands very, crappy instruction. Sorry, excuse my language. You can give it a really vague prompt and it could do something, whereas previously with intelligent automation, you still had to be very specific. So I don't know if this has happened to anybody else, but when you start working with AI, you actually get a bit disappointed by how not intelligent AI is. You're like, oh, this is how it actually works. I thought it was magic, okay. But I don't know how ChatGPT or Gen AI works, so I still do think it's magic. Sorry, is it the next slide? Oh, there we go, okay. So again, as I mentioned, it's just given intelligent automation a boost into what it's doing. So previously, intelligent automation could read a PDF, but you had to tell it, you had to give it a text label and say, if you want to take out the total balance, it will be next to this text label that would say total balance, or maybe, it would be a coordinate, you could give it a coordinate. And this doesn't really work if, say, for instance, you're working in a process where invoices are coming from suppliers and you have absolutely no control over the format or, how it's going to look on a screen. And this is where Gen AI can come in, because Gen AI can recognize it might not say total balance, it might just say total, it might say balance, it might say final balance, there might not be a label, it will just be like written separately from the receipt items, and it can work with that. It can also work quite well with handwriting, so if anybody's ever used OCR, do not touch handwriting, because humans can't really read handwriting, so a computer definitely can't read handwriting. But what Gen AI can do is take the context of the writing, what it's written in, what's written around it, and kind of make a more educated guess about what something might say, the same way a human would. So if you used a classic OCR tool, it might guess that a word has like no consonants or no vowels, and you're looking at it like, that's clearly not a word, that's obviously not what it says. But Gen AI can also think like that and say, maybe it's actually this word, or maybe if we change this letter, that would make an actual word to produce. It can also generate images. So previously, if you wanted an intelligent automation to recognize an image, you would first have to show it the image. So again, this doesn't really work if you have no control over the images or you want it to be dynamic and flexible. So now you can do things like, can you count how many people in this video aren't wearing their proper PPE, for risk compliance? And then that could feed into an automation that might report the count. But, the automation doesn't need to know what these people look like beforehand, whereas a traditional intelligent automation would. And lastly, with chatbots, Gen AI has completely transformed chatbots. So before, it would have taken months to develop a good chatbot, do all the different sentiment analysis and tokenization, and you had to bring in a language analysis, and it was just a whole thing. Whereas now you just need a ChatGPT model. Private or on-prem, please do not leak your organization's data. And then to give it the information that you wanted to have access to, again, please be careful. Do not give it access to sensitive HR data, so you can ask it questions about people's salaries. But you can have that control so it can do something effective quite easily. And well, I did have a demo, but it's not going to work. But I had a demo of a chatbot, and what I'd done was give it access to a Microsoft project tracker. So it exported it from Excel, and I had all the data in it about my imaginary project, and I gave it to a ChatGPT model. And literally an hour later, I could have a conversation with it, ask it, who's in charge of this, who's the owner of this, what's the progress on this, how many tasks does this person have, what's the due date, all these different things that let you ask questions. It lets other members of the team ask questions. It means you have access to data quickly. You don't have to troll through things to answer the question. You can use ChatGPT to answer questions for you, analyze data while maybe you're on the go, or maybe, in this instance, maybe your project manager's sick and they're the only person that has the answer. You can ask the virtual project manager instead. And then free up the project manager to do more valuable things like, coaching a successful team or building relationships or making important decisions, things that project managers are actually supposed to do. But that's all from me on my non-working demos. But thank you very much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Apologies so much for the tech problems there. Technology. It's what we do every day, and we'd love to hate it. Any questions? Oh yeah, up top. Just again, apologies to anyone that can hear my shoe squeaking. I didn't make the right choice today. I was telling Kieran the way in, I thought I'd get away with it, but no, I'm up the top. Here we go. Sorry, pass it down.
Really nice overview. I'm sorry I laughed at the lack of demos, but I've been there. What you haven't touched upon, which I think is one of the challenges, is the fact that Gen AI seems to have a hallucination problem. And do you have any thoughts of how to deal with that? Of the, that it makes up data and makes up answers, and if you don't check the answers and just use them, it can have bad repercussions.
That's a really great question, and it's actually something that comes up a lot. So unfortunately, this is one of the limitations of Gen AI. It does make things up. And when we tell clients this, we kind of there is nothing you can do about this. It's important to know the risks. So when you're going in and you're using something like AI, especially Gen AI that makes things up, you have to know the risks. You have to know what you're doing so that you can keep an eye on them and you can manage them. And then the second part of this is that we would always tell people you have to keep a human in the loop. So if I built an automation that used ChatGPT in it, I would get a warning sign from Microsoft saying you have to add in an approval after that. It has to go in. You have to have a part where, you're showing a human, this is what's been identified. Before I do anything with this information, it has to be checked over. You can't just let someone do it. And we would always tell people, you treat an automation the same way you would treat a junior member of staff. Don't let them send important emails. Don't let them do things that you would not stand over. Don't let them make a presentation for you, because you will be standing there going, oh God, why is that in there? if you can't trust it to do everything, you can let it do 80%. You can let it, draft something for you, get a bit of the way, but you can't let Gen AI do 100% of the task because it is risky to do that.
Great. Any other questions? Cool. I also like RPA. I've also been told I look dead behind the eyes sometimes. So thank you very much, Emily. Thank you.